Hi, everyone. Welcome. As you're joining, if you just want to drop in the chat where you're joining from, I would love to hear where you're at, where you're tuning in from on this beautiful July day. I am in Atlanta, Canada, and it is an absolute gorgeous day. Awesome. All right, so everybody knows now that the chat feature is working. If you have any questions during today's session, drop them in the chat or you can use the QA feature. I am running solo, so it's going to be a little bit tricky for me to go back and forth, but I will be checking the chat and making sure I'm answering questions as we go. So let's get into it. My name is Jennifer. I'm the Growth Marketing Manager here at Rise Vision. And today we're here for the session, Build Engaging Industrial Signage Using Rise Vision Templates and Integrations. Who came up with that title? It was me. In today's session, I'm going to show you how to turn everyday data, updates, announcements into visually appealing signage using Rise Vision's templates and integrations. My goal here and in this session is to teach you how to streamline your content creation and get more value from your displays without spending hours designing. So one thing we really pride ourselves on is making it easy and quick to create content. So I want to show you how to do that. And at the end of the session, I hope that everyone walks away with at least one little nugget of information that you can apply today. So today I'm going to walk you through some content that's commonly used in industrial and corporate environments using real customer examples. I know a lot of our content is K-12, but this session is really for industrial, corporate, and not leaning into those K-12 templates that we have. And then using those customer examples, I'm going to show you and talk to you about how that design, that overall design, how it can be improved using our built-in tools and then just some design principles as well. So let's get into this. So most of you are probably already aware or familiar with Rise Vision and how we're supporting communication in organizations. But we've seen a lot of industrial organizations struggle to communicate effectively and keep employees engaged. And so we provide that easy to use platform with digital signage, screen sharing, and emergency alerts to help improve communication, foster a more connected workplace, and enhance safety. And speaking to countless customers in the industrial and corporate space, there are three common goals that I hear again and again. With these three goals, let me know which one resonates the most with you and what is your biggest priority right now. So with these three, number one is improving safety. So worker safety is obviously number one for most organizations, if not all, and they want to keep their employees safe in their day-to-day tasks and then promote that safety first culture. Some of the ways companies do this using digital signage is to share safety reminders or PPE reminders, have those emergency alerts, and share things like safety dashboards. So if safety is your number one priority, let me know in the chat right now. Number two is boost productivity. That's huge. I feel like we talk about productivity and doing more every day. So another big goal for organizations that I hear all the time, but companies want to empower their team and their workers to make informed decisions and make good choices while they're working that keep them aligned with the targets and the company goals. So we see different examples of this through up-to-date KPIs or other metrics, and that just helps keep everybody aligned. So if number two, if productivity is your main focus for digital signage, let me know in the chat. Let's go for the third one. And the third common goal that we hear all the time is to engage employees. So companies want to engage their employees and create a culture with strong communication. And it's known that engaged employees are happy employees, and this can affect other areas of the company as well. Okay, so everybody wants to engage employees. That's great. All right. Oh, Aaron says all three. No, Aaron, you have to choose just one. Let's choose one. All right. Isabel, safety, perfect. All right. And sorry, we're not running with a presentation with a slide deck today. So I'm just going to chat for a little bit and then I'm going to share my screen and we'll go through some examples. Penny says ours would to keep students informed. Love that, Penny. So I think talking about engagement is very similar to keeping students informed. Andrea, same thing, keeping the public informed. All right, so we can apply those same three goals to all of the different industries if we're focusing just beyond industrial and corporate. So if you attended our Designing for Impact webinar earlier this year, then you've probably already heard these tips. But if you haven't, I'm going to share some design basics just before we jump into sharing my screen. So there are three things that we want our content to do. We want it to grab our audience's attention, we want to keep their attention, and then we want to have them remember what they saw, right? So those are our three main goals when it comes to digital signage. And then as we go through the actual examples, I'll mention these basics so you have like a frame of reference. But here are three things that we need to remember when we're designing signage. Text size. So that's making sure that your text can be read. It's an appropriate size for the size of the display, where the display is in the room. You want to ensure that there's high enough contrast so everybody can see it. And that's in line with keeping it accessible. And we will talk about that later. We're using bold or easy to read fonts, and we're keeping the messages short. Especially with digital signage, we want to consider it more of a billboard and less of a brochure. Quick content that people can read because they're probably not just going to be standing there reading the message. The second basic is hierarchy. So we want to emphasize or highlight what's important, what's the most important content. We order the messaging in terms of priority because not all of the content can be a priority. And then we guide the eye across the display so that they're seeing all of the content. And the last design basic is colors. So we're picking cohesive colors. We're picking high contrast colors so that it keeps it accessible. We're adding in neutrals to make our colors pop. Not everything needs to be a super bright color. And then we're also using our brand colors, whatever those might be for your company or your organization, to really create that cohesive look and ensure that, all of your content, whether it's digital signage, the memos you put out, posters you have in your building, social media, everything is branded and cohesive. All right. So now that we talked about our goals, design basics, there are a couple of examples that we're going to go through. So for improving safety, we're going to look at PPE or safety reminders and safety dashboards. For improving productivity, we're going to look at production dashboards. So we have two different versions of a dashboard and how we can share that. And then for improving communication and engagement, we have a couple of examples. So an HR announcement, which could be not just from HR, but any sort of announcement, a meetings announcement, or you want people to keep track of certain days or times. And then just general employee engagement, which could go into student as well. So I am going to share my screen now. So can I get a thumbs up in the chat if you can see my screen? Brian, thank you so much for your thumbs up. All right, let's get into it. So this first example, this is a real customer example, and it is safety reminders. So they are talking about electrical hazards and some of the big issues that we see right here. This is too much text. It makes it very hard to read. I know that it's blurry. It wouldn't normally be blurry in the actual digital signage. It's not blurry. So this is what I would suggest instead. We want to break up our content into bite-sized bits of information. So this template is your news and announcements list. And this is a template that we have in Rise Vision that is perfect for sharing small bite-sized pieces of information. So you could really use this for any sort of announcements, but I'm going to show you how we can use this one to create a really nice safety reminder or PPE reminder presentation. So this is what the final presentation looks like. This is the one that I created using this template. So here's how I did this. So in the news and announcements, what you can do here is you could type in your information or you can upload a CSV and it will populate it all for you. So going to the example that I have my news and announcements, and what I did is I made my subtitle up here. So I have that as electrical hazards. I have the title, and then I have like the information that I want to share. So if you look at the example, this is electrical hazards, and then each of these inadequate wiring, overloads, ground faults. Those are each of the subcategories or little bits of information. So what I've done there is I've just broken them out like that. And what I've also done, this image is maybe a little bit dramatic, but I updated the images to the content. So it reinforces the message, but it also draws your attention. Maybe you don't see the text first, maybe you see the image, but now you're going to look at it because you're like, whoa, what's going on here? And then one of the other features of this template is the scrolling text. So a couple things that you can put in here. This is a great spot to put in reminders for an upcoming safety meeting. I put in here for template, it says, don't forget to submit your weekly reports by X day. So there's a lot of customization here that you can use to make this template your own. couple of other things. So this QR code, I don't really need this for my safety reminders. So what I can do is I can press hide and now the QR code disappears. So I don't have to worry about that. But this is just a great example of how I can share my message and still have things like the date, time, weather. One other thing that I did here is I updated the background to match like my industry. So throughout this presentation, you're going to notice I have a placeholder logo. So I'm pretending that I'm an industrial company. So what I did to make this background, it's still in line with my goals in my company, but I want to ensure that it's accessible. So if I just put this image without this gradient, you wouldn't really be able to see the date and time and weather. So what I did is in Canva, this is my image. And you could use another tool if you wanted, but we just use Canva a lot. So if I just had the image like this without that gradient, it would be really hard to see those other options. So what I've done is I've created this gradient. So you can go into your elements and you press rectangle. And I'm going to stretch it to the length or to the width, sorry, of the picture. And then really cool tip is you can go into your document colors into the colors and you pick up here gradient. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick my style and I want it to be from the top to the bottom. And then I want this top color to be white. So I'm just going to slide it all the way over. I want this bottom color to not be pink. So I'll make it white, but then I'm going to decrease the transparency all the way down to nothing. So now I have this really nice gradient block that I can use. So this gradient, so we have it up at the top, and then what we would do is flip it and bring it all the way down. And then I would export that and upload it into Canva, which I did here. You can see I have my background and then it makes that really nice gradient. So that is our first example. Does anybody have any questions about this template or this kind of use case? Can you control the length of each slide in this presentation since there is a lot of text? So that's a really good question. Let me have a quick look. Do you know what? I'm not sure if there is a way to control that. I will take that away and ask though, unless anybody from ResVision is in the chat right now and can answer. I will ask that because that is a good question and it is something that you should take into consideration if you have this one going, the length of your text. All right, perfect. So next one is safety dashboard. So safety dashboards get used all the time, and this doesn't have to necessarily be safety dashboards. You could use this for production, quality, whatever it is. This is just a great one example. This is their safety dashboard. A couple of things that I noticed right away. This design isn't quite accessible because it fails our contrast checks. So remember I mentioned that as a design principle is we want to have good contrast. The accessibility is important because you want to make sure that your information is available to everyone. 12 million Americans have color blindness, and that isn't the only condition that would affect how people view your content. So something really good to keep in mind. So right here, I'm looking at this green on the blue, and I'm not sure if that's going to pass contrast, but then also this blue on blue. So I have screenshots actually of the contrast, and we can see that this blue on blue, this has a really low contrast number, so it's actually not going to be accessible. And then same with the green on blue. Again, that ratio is really low, so it's going to be really hard for most people to see it. This is what I would do instead. And this is actually also going to lead us into our first time-saving tip. So we're going to use Google Sheets to ensure our dashboard is showing up. And we're going to ensure that it's being updated automatically and it's showing the latest information. So we're going to use the blank template and embed our Google Sheet using the web page component. Right now, we don't have a template that's a full screen Google Sheet. You can use it with Excel, so we do have a full screen Excel, but in this case, I want to show you how to do it with a Google Sheet. So this is basically what it's going to look like when we're done, and this is what we're starting with. Is literally nothing. So you're going to create your dashboard in Google Sheets or Excel. I created mine in Google Sheets, and you can see one thing I want to a mention here is that we're really applying those contrasting colors. So this green and navy, super high contrast. White on navy, high contrast, and then the black on the orange, high contrast. You could style this any way that you want. We're just trying to make the content pop and share that key information. So again, this information would be completely dependent on your organization. And then what we're going to do is we're going to embed that blank template using the web page component. So I'm going to go, this is what we're going to end up with. I'm going to go into this blank template and there's no base component. So I'm going to click on components and I'm going to hit web page and then I'm going to enter my URL. So from my safety dashboard, there's two different ways you can do this, but this is a trick that I learned from our UX team actually last night. So I'm going to share this one. Go here and then publish to the web. And now I'm not going to do the entire document. I'm just going to do this one page. And then we're going to copy this link and go into our blank template and paste it there. And then from here, we can choose the refresh interval or the zoom if we want to zoom in. And this is basically what we're going to end up with when we go to press publish. This is what it's going to look like, which is great. You do get the little footer here that says it's published by Google Sheets, and it's going to, but then it's also going to say how often it updates, so people always know. And then you also have the title, but pretty minor. One other thing that you can do with this spreadsheet to embed it, if that's not an option, if publishing your spreadsheet isn't an option for whatever reason, you can go here and you can get this link, copy it, paste it in here. But then there is a secret that I learned is to make it not look like this, where you can see the whole browser, is we're going to copy in some code. So at the end of our URL, we're going to scroll all the way over, and where it says edit, we're going to get rid of that and we're going to replace it with this code right here. And this is basically going to zoom it in so that you can see the whole spreadsheet. With this version though, if you're copying the link and not publishing it to the web, you do see the columns and the bottom. So that is one thing to keep in mind. But this is a great way to ensure that your dashboard is always up to date. And so you don't have to update Rise Vision. It's going to automatically pull that information for you, which is the main takeaway I want to share, is that we can really save you time by just having that content be auto updated. So any questions about that? Elton, the code, yes, the secret code. Let me put that in the chat right now. Yeah, so at the end of your URL, where it says edit, you replace it with this edit code instead. Any questions for the safety dashboard? I'll give it 1 minute. I'm just going to have a quick sip of water. So next up is production dashboard. So similar to safety dashboard, you could be doing this in Google Sheets. Main issues that we're seeing here is it's busy. There's a lot of different colors. It's hard to read. This background there's a lot going on, but the main thing is it's really difficult to read. If you had this on a screen and people were walking by, they might not be able to read everything. Let's see how we can improve this. With this one, I'm going to show you an example using Power BI. So this is like my second or third time-saving tip, but we're going to reuse content that we already have. And with Power BI, we can take that display or that dashboard and turn it into really dynamic, up-to-date content. So we're going to use the full screen Power BI template, similar to the web page or to the blank template. There's nothing here. But what we're going to do is we're going to link it to Power BI. So in this example, we're not going to have an exact example. I showed you a production dashboard and now I'm going into a different option, but it's because I don't have a Power BI production dashboard made. So let's just use our imaginations with that. So here, this is what the Power BI template looks like when I've connected it to Power BI. So you're going to go in here. The base component is Power BI. So you're going to click on that and you're going to sign in to Microsoft. Let's pretend that this is blank. I'm going in, I've signed into Microsoft, and I can choose between reports or dashboards. Within Power BI, there's two different options. So whichever works for you, you can have reports or dashboards. You choose that, choose your workspace, and then choose the report you want to show. You can also choose the refresh rate. So this is every 5, 30, or 60 minutes, depending on how often this data gets updated. Maybe this data doesn't get updated, it only gets updated once a week. Then you can have it refresh every 60 minutes. But if it's getting refreshed all the time or updated all the time, you could change that refresh. So that's it. You just link the report or the dashboard and it's going to show up and it's going to look like that. So the Power BI integration is a great way to, again, reuse that content you already have and not have to monkey around trying to get it onto your display. You can just integrate the two, and now you don't have to go into Rise Vision and update this presentation. It's going to update automatically. All right. That's that example. Does anybody have any questions about that? Chris, do we have a Tableau integration? That's a great question. We do not right now, but I believe it is something that we are working on and it's on the roadmap. All right. So we talked about safety. We talked about productivity. Everybody was really, their priority was engagement. So that's where we're going to go into now is employee communication and engagement. So for our next example, this is an HR example, an HR announcement example. Again, a couple of issues that we see. There's a lot of text, there's a lot of things to read, and there's an opportunity, I think, here to elevate it and make this design look a little bit more polished. So what we're going to do here is we're going to use our announcements and daily motivation quote template. Now, one thing that you may have noticed, or that I want you to go into this next part of the session, is with an open mind. All of these templates, they might say what they're for, but there's endless opportunities. We have to see the options from the bones of it. All right. It's kind of like buying a house. There's good bones, the layout's good, the overall structure's good, the wallpaper can be changed, that kind of stuff. So let's think about it like that. So we're going to use this template, and this is what we're going to come up with to make it just a little bit nicer, a little bit more polished looking for this HR announcement. So what I'm doing here is I'm changing this template to suit my needs. I'm going to go in here and you have the option to link to a calendar. I don't have one to link here because that's not what my use case is. So I can update my title, my message, and my text, or my text is over here. This would be like a call to action. And then we have a couple other elements. We have the arrow, QR code, and the logo. So in my version, I updated the title, my message. I changed the name of this. So in the actual template is called text. Did you know you can do that? We can edit the label. So this could just say text, or I can change it to really anything that I want. But in my case, I think it makes sense as a call to action. And then you can also hide elements that you don't need or components. So in the template, there's an arrow and a QR code, but because I've changed this to call Michelle at this phone number, I can just hide those, right? So I can show or I can hide, and those are going to be removed. I can also change my logo. So on some of the other examples, I didn't have an opportunity to do that, but with this template, there wouldn't normally be a Rise one just because I'm logged into our account. It would just be blank or to have a placeholder, but you can go in there and put in your logo. But one thing that I wanted to share, so this is the template, this motivational quote, this updates automatically. It's one of those auto updating features that we have at Rise Vision, but I don't want that in this presentation, and it's not really going to work with what I'm doing. So what I did here, you can see here, I covered it up. What I did is I created an image in Canva. So again, back to Canva, you can do this directly through Rise, or you can open a new tab and do it in Canva. But I created this graphic. It looks a little bit like this. And then what I did is I exported it and imported it in to my template. So if you go here, go to components, And then you have a ton of things that you can add to the template. You can add whatever you want. And I'm going to add an image. And then same thing, you would upload the file or pull it from storage, and then you're able to move it around and place it wherever you want and completely customize that template and change really the use case for it. All right, so that is this one. The key things that I want to emphasize here is that a lot of these templates can be customized, and just because it says this for one thing doesn't mean it is. You can make it your own. You can add components to cover up things on the template that you maybe don't want to use or elements that you don't need. So that's the HR announcement. It's just a great way to share a bunch of information with people. Just ignore the background, guys. It's a shared space. All right. Question from Emily. Would you use the calendar button if you were advertising an event or something and needed a specific date highlighted? Yeah, Emily, so that's the intent with this calendar. So like these announcements, if you attached a calendar, they would update and scroll through if you had more than one event or announcement kind of thing like that. All right. Does anybody have any other questions about that HR announcement example? No? Perfect. Oh, and actually, sorry, one thing I did want to mention with this graphic, when I export it or when I'm downloading it, hit that transparent background button. So then all of this white is going to come out transparent, and that makes it really easy to move it around on your template and not have the box around it. Okay. Sorry, I saw one question come up in the Q&A. Just give me a sec. Read that. I don't see the HR announcements on my tab under presentations. I only see add presentation. So what you're going to do is, so if I'm in my presentations and I have that add presentation tab, which I think that you can see, it's not called HR announcements. That's one thing. When you're using the search function, you might have to go a little bit broader. You might have to scroll to find one that matches. But this one, the example that I showed you was called announcements. And daily motivation. So it's not called HR announcements. It's called announcements and daily motivation. But there are a couple of different options. We're going to talk about this one actually in my next example. And then this your news and announcements list we talked about in one of the first examples. All right. Okay. So next example is this upcoming dates and meeting schedule. This is a pretty solid sign. You got your dates, you got a title. You don't have too many dates, which is a thing. People try to jam pack a bunch of information on there. And then we have 2 pieces of clip art. Not bad, but we could elevate it and make it look a little bit better. And that's what I'm going to show you how to do. So with this one, I'm going to show you how to make it look better, but I'm also going to make it to show you how to save time so you don't have to update your content more frequently by integrating your calendar. We're going to use this daily calendar and announcements template. So what we're going to do here is we're going to link our Google or Microsoft Calendar, and that's going to streamline your workflow. And then we're going to also update our brand and logo colors to make it suit our industry and be a little bit more on brand for us. We're going to take the presentation or the template from this, and we're going to customize it so that it looks like this. First thing here, if you didn't know, you can set up your brand settings, and that's going to apply to all of your templates going forward. So in the brand settings, you can put your logo and your colors, and then those will apply to all the templates going forward. In this case, I'm not going to update the brand settings because I'm using the Rise Vision account. I'm just going to show you those colors within this component. So I'm clicking override brand colors, because those would be the green and blue from Rise Vision. And then I'm going to put in a dark color and a light color. So if you think back to the safety dashboard, these were my 2 colors there. All right, then I'm updating the logo and the background. So the background, you can choose to match your industry. You could choose it to match the season. In the example, they're celebrating Easter and Earth Day. So if I wanted, I could have something that matches that. In this case, we're leaning into that industrial setting. So I put the crane image. And I actually just found this crane image using the stock library, which if you didn't know, we do have that, and it pulls hundreds, thousands, millions of photos and videos that you can use and include in any of your presentations. So updated that. And then I'm updating my message and my title just so people know what they're looking at. So upcoming dates to remember, adding these to your calendar. But the real time saver here is adding your calendar. You connect your account either with Google or Microsoft, and then you choose which calendar you want to include. So for this case, I have calendar for webinar example. And then what you can do from that is you can change the date range. So you can have that content showing maybe just 1 or 2 days at a time, but you can even schedule content up into months in advance. So you could set this template up, this presentation, to show content 6 months in, or yeah, 6 months in advance, and then not have to update the content because it's just going to continually pull your next scheduled event and just keep those ones going. And then you can also hide the completed events. So if you have a really busy schedule where you have events happening, multiple events happening every day, those will drop off using this feature. So they won't show after they've already been completed. All right, with this template in this example, the one thing I really want you to take away is you can simplify your workflow and not have to be managing your content by linking your calendar, and then it's just always going to be showing the most up-to-date information. Do we have any questions about this template or this use case? I'm just going to look at that Q&A question now. Gwyneth says, "This is magic. Thank you." Gwyneth, thank you so much. Very nice to hear. All right, let's go to the next one. So in the original webinar description, I did say we were going to have 10 examples, but we really don't have enough time for that. So we're going to have one more example, and then I'm going to share a couple of time-saving tips that I have for you, and then we'll wrap up with some Q&A. So the last example, this is employee engagement. This isn't a message about open enrollment. It's not about a meeting. It's just for fun. And this is probably like the best kind of content because you're going to connect with employees and people in your workplace on a personal level based on their interests. And how great is that? So this company, I love this. This is a great example. I use it all the time, but this company, their workers are really big on hunting. So they have a hunting competition every year, and whoever gets the biggest buck wins a prize. I'm not sure what the prize is, but love it. Create content that your audience is actually going to engage with. This template, pretty good, not a bad presentation. There's quite a bit of text, but overall, really great. But there are some ways that we can polish it up. So one of the amazing integrations that Rise Vision has is with Canva. So for this example, we're going to create a polished design using a Canva template, and then we're going to put it into a full screen image template. You can, again, access Canva directly in Rise Vision, or you can create your content in Canva, download it, and upload it into the template. So this is the final version that we're going to look at. I'm going to show you how I came up with this. Within Canva, again, you have to use your imagination and kind of imagine how things would look beyond the photo and the text. I found this template and I thought that this would be great. It would work for me because it also mimics the original presentation where if we imagined this in 3 columns, there's 2 columns of image and 1 column of text. Because there's so much text though, I want to have 2 columns of text and 1 column of image. So if you can imagine that, this is what I see with this template. This is maybe a third, and then this text space is the 2/3 on the side. So this is what I created. A couple of things of how easy it is to do this and really make it your own is I changed the background. So I put in my branded color, which was that dark navy. And then I also, for some of the text, I went in and I changed the color so that it was that orange color. My title, I changed the size, made them a little bit smaller. And then for my text, I added bullet points because bullet points are always a good idea when you have more than one sentence of information. Think bullet points. So put in my bullet points, made sure that the font was fairly sized and really high contrast with that background color. And then I put in my image, again, just using Canva for that, and took out some of these other elements that I'm just like, maybe I don't love those. That don't really match with my actual brand or my company. And then the other thing I did is this little color block with the text. If I had kept that where it is, and imagine it was like right here, it would just have all of the text in one side and it would be hard to read. So what I want to do is I made it a little bit bigger and put it over here. So now people are gonna, maybe they look at the image first, but they're gonna start reading and they're gonna come over. So we're sweeping their eye around the entire image and across the entire presentation. So then what I'm doing is I'm downloading or exporting this as a image or as a PNG or a JPEG file. And then I'm going to go into my template. So this was the blank template. So I'll show you that. I'm going to add in my image there. This is, I think, just actually like a full screen. So you can just add the one component, but we could just go and upload our file here. And then we can upload it or we can select it from storage. Okay, add selected. So let's just imagine that this background is actually just white. So the component gets added and then we would just stretch it to fit. And easy as that, we would just have our presentation there. The real takeaway here is that you can create your design in Canva using your own imagination. You can create your own content, of course, but then you can also use one of their designs. While Rise Vision has 600 plus templates and we have a whole bunch of integrations, if there's something that you can't find, you can lean into Canva. They have thousands of designs and you can really pull from any sort of thing. And then, that integration is just so easy peasy to use as well. I'll show you here. So if you went into components, one of the components is Canva. So you click there and then you can choose what kind of content you want to create. This kind of gives you the dimensions and you can pop that and it's going to open up Canva and you can just work on it directly. That's a great option as well. Okay. So question from Deanna, what is best to use, PNG or JPEG? That's a good question, Deanna. I'm not 100% sure. I always go with PNG and that's just how I roll. If somebody has a lot of graphic experience, you can maybe pop in the chat and let us know. I know that here, so in Canva, they say a JPEG is best for sharing and a PNG is best for complex images and illustrations. So yeah, I just usually do a PNG because that's what I'm comfortable with. And then in terms of size, I'm not 100% sure what the size limits are on uploading to Rise Vision. One thing is if you have a lower powered media player, you definitely want to limit the size of your content, your videos and that kind of thing, because it can make it run a little bit slower. Typically, I will try to run an image file through an image optimizer just to reduce the size as much as possible and just keep everything fast, but I'm not 100% sure on any size limits. And then Amber, when you select Canva as an option, does it automatically upload? I believe it does, but let's test it out together. So we're going into Canva. Let's pick a presentation. We'll give it a second to load, and we're just going to pick one of these examples. And then we're going to press save. Let's pretend that we edited this and made it perfect to what we wanted. So yeah, then it does automatically load and then you're just going to resize it or scale it because it just shows up as a little thumbnail and then we'll just resize it and then we have that in there. All right, good. Like I said, in the original webinar description, I thought we were going to have a little bit more time. We ran out of time. Anyways, instead of having 10 examples, we have the 6. So the time-saving tips I want to give you. So I chatted with our customer success and our support teams to get some time-saving tips. They answer all sorts of questions all the time. And so these are the things that come up regularly in conversations with customers and that they think would be most valuable for you. This tip is from John. If you've submitted a support ticket, you may have talked to John. He's brilliant. And it really echoes what we've already talked about is that you don't have to constantly be in Rise Vision and you don't have to constantly be updating and creating content. You can set up presentations for holidays, special events, general campaigns in advance, and then they will appear when you want them to, and then they drop off your schedule when they're done. With this situation, you might not need to log in maybe only once a month to just update the content if you didn't want to do it in one big batch for a year. With this time-saving tip, I'm going to show you how to do it, but I'm just going to read a question that we got prior to the webinar. So this is from Anthony. It says, I would like to schedule a presentation that will run over a few days. For example, from July 15th to July 21st. It's going to promote an event. The event will take place on July 21st at 1 p.m. Can you demonstrate how to schedule this to play and then automatically remove it from playing on the day of the event at 1 p.m.? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go into our schedules and we're going to choose the schedule that we have running. In this case, it's going to be my webinar schedule. And we're going to choose a template or a presentation and we're going to then schedule it so it disappears. So let's look at this Power BI example. Oh, wait, no, let's not look at that one. Let's look at this employee engagement example. So imagine, let's pretend that this is for that event and we're having it run from July 15th to July 21st. So instead of on timeline, we're going to click that off and we're going to then choose our dates. Because the 15th is in the past, we're going to say July 16th to July 22nd. So let's just imagine that's the new days. And we can, from here, we can toggle off that all day and we can have the start time and the end time if we want. And then we can have the daily, weekly, monthly, or yearly occurrence. So maybe this event happens once a year. We could have it run every year after year for only those certain days. We could do that monthly. Maybe we want to have it run once a month for 3 days. You have to remind everybody to get their time cards in or whatever it is. So that's how we would do that. So we want to have our end time would be 1 p.m. Our start time, we're just going to leave it. 8 a.m. is great. That's when everybody gets into the office. And we're going to have it run daily because we want this to be promoting the event. But having it with an end time on July 22nd, once that hits, this presentation is going to drop off of your schedule and it's not going to show up anymore. So that's how you would do that, Anthony, if you're listening. And that's how you can pre-schedule content so that you don't have to be in here all the time. Again, if you had a reminder that you only have to run for a couple of days a month, you could pre-schedule that and have it reoccur so you don't have to do it manually. Okay. So I'm going to have a look here. Aaron, is there any storage limit for images and videos uploaded to the Rise Vision account? I do not believe so. I think it is unlimited. I think there's best practices for having smaller image files and videos so that they don't bog down your media player. But I think it's unlimited storage. So as many videos and pictures as you want, you can put up there. Okay. And then there was one question in the Q&A, so I'm just going to look at that. What template do you suggest for a schedule that is outside of Google or Microsoft? Kiera, that is a good question. So maybe you could just drop in the chat. So you have a schedule that you don't have connected to a calendar. I think if I'm reading or if I'm listening to that correctly. So in that case, when you don't have a calendar, you could link it to a spreadsheet. Oh, Kiera responded. Yes, it's called WCA Online. It's a tutoring schedule. Okay, so there's a couple of different options. Kiera, I would really recommend that you reach out to support because they're going to be the best ones to answer your question in all of the detail. I might give you an answer that's not as eloquent or sophisticated as they can provide, but we do have a couple of options where you can pull the schedule in a web page. So you could do that if the web page is public and not private. In that case, you could go into one of the full or the blank templates and you could pull your web page and then just put that link in there instead. So you could try that, or you could take the schedule and put it into a Google spreadsheet or Excel and have it show up as a list. There's a couple of different templates for that as well. Okay. Yeah, but I would recommend emailing support because they're going to be able to give you the best options that are a little bit more elegant. Okay. Couple more questions. Elton, what's the best way to contact support? It is emailing them at support@risevision.com. They will answer within 1 business hour. Anonymous, how can we create our own interactive slide? Okay, this is a good question. We do have a couple of options for basic interaction. You can use the Google Slide to do that. At our last tips and tricks webinar, we talked about that. So I would recommend heading over to that webinar and giving that a look because it's a little bit too long to explain here, but we do have some basic interactivity options. Okay, a couple other things. So the auto updating templates, again, a great way to save time. If you go into add presentation, over on the side here, we have our calendar and then we have this category. Scroll down to the bottom and click updates automatically. So all of these templates, these update daily with something new. So a lot of really popular ones in here. Daily motivation, super popular. If your workforce or your employees are really into history, you could do a history on this day, daily quotes. Great if you want to have a little quote that you can spiel off. So lots of different options. We have a couple more tips, but it looks if there's more questions, we can go through those as well. The one other thing that I wanted to share with you, so this tip came from Cam, and he said this is a great way to have really consistent content. So get started with an overlay template like our zoned category and name it main or master template. And then from here, you already have the weather, the date, the time, and then your logo. And then you can put any kind of content, this huge middle part. So this is a great way that all of your content will really feel the same and be branded. What we would do in that case is, so this is our zoned minimal template. We could change the size. So whatever kind of message you want to have, maybe you just want to have your company name. You'd obviously update your logo, the background, you can change that as well. But this embedded presentation section, what we're going to do is we're going to click on that. So this base component is a playlist. And then from here, we can really add whatever we want. Text, you could put in a bunch of images that scroll through, a spreadsheet, anything that you want. And what I did is I added a presentation. So here's this option presentation, and you can choose whatever it is you want. I'll put in this one, safety hazards. So it's in there. Trust me. I'm gonna press publish, and then I'm gonna go to my schedule and go over here, and I'm gonna flip to the last one. And now this zoned template has that presentation embedded in the middle. And then one other little quick tip I'm going to show. So let's say you want to share your content, but it has to get approved before it goes live. You can do that super easily by pressing the share button. You're going to get this URL, copy that, and you could send it to somebody. You can email it to them. It's a public link, and they'll be able to see your content or see what's on the schedule. Okay. I'm going to turn it over to questions now. We have just a couple of minutes. Brian, is that for the whole schedule, or can you edit when each presentation is scheduled within the webinar schedule? No. So Brian, that was for each individual presentation. So when you schedule for each individually, it will show up here. So these are all your presentation items. And you can, let's do a quick one here. Let's change the date. So it's going to be done on this day. So now you can see that presentation has been modified, and it's only that one on this schedule. Okay, how can I create one large display using 4 media units? Ooh, Vito, that is a good question, but that is outside of the realm of this webinar. Please reach out to support and they will be able to advise you on that. And that email is support@risevision.com. All right. Thank you all so much for being here. I really hope that you got a little something that you can use and apply immediately. I'll send out the recording. I am going to share some of the templates because people seemed excited about that. If you're not following us on LinkedIn, please do. We're also on YouTube, and we have this webinar will be cut up into short little bits. So if you want to go back to one of these examples, that's where you're going to find it. And we do have a gift card draw for everybody who submits the post-webinar survey. So that will be coming out as well. Please let me know if you have any questions. You can reach out. Thank you again so much for being here. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. Bye.